Good afternoon, you all. My name is Angela Gonzalez. I graduated from the master's program in applied linguistics with Universidad Distrital, I think 5 years ago. I was taking a literacy class with Dr. Clavijo 6 years ago. So it is really, really nice to be back and share with you my project. Thank you, Dr. Clavijo, for the invitation. I'm really honored. I think this experience it was very important for my development as a teacher and as a researcher, so I'm very happy to share it with you guys today. Initially we want to do this live, but there's a problem with time zone, so we have to do a video instead. But if you guys have any questions or comments or feedback, I'll really appreciate it that you send it to me through my email or tell Dr. Clavijo. I'm very sure we can arrange a way to answer your questions. So, well, let's start with the project. The name of the project was Embera Immigrant Children's School in Process in Bogota, and it was conducted in around 2011-2012. At that time I was a teacher in a public school in the Liceo Agustín Nieto Caballero. I was working with the Departamento de Humanidades, teaching English and Spanish. At that time, a group of students, Embera immigrants, were coming to Bogota due to the forced displacement. They were subject to due to issues in their territory. So a lot of the Embera populations and families came to be around downtown Bogota, and that immediately implied that the kids will go to public schools around the area. So the Liceo Agustín Nieto Caballero was one of those schools that received Embera children right after they started coming out of territory in Bogota. There were other cities that were experiencing and are experiencing this issue, but the Liceo was one of the first ones in Bogota. General things about the Liceo: it is a public school located downtown Bogota, and it holds a multicultural population from different parts of Colombia and Ecuador. So, there were Quichua and Embera Catillos and Embera Chamiz. In the school, 3 languages are spoken: Embera, Quechua, and Spanish. Of course, Spanish was the language of the school. So the Embera community came to Bogota from 2 different territorios. Mainly the Catillos came from Chocó, and then the Chamiz came from Risaralda. Of course, they have to face a lot of cultural challenges when they came to the city. There was a difference in language, but also there was a difference on how things are in a city compared to as they were back in territory, where some of them mainly spoke Embera, and agriculture was their main source of income. In the law of the Embera community was the one that they have to follow, so there was a process of acculturation. There was also socioeconomic changes. They were forced to beg in the streets, and they were looking for government aid, and the aid was not ready for them at that time. And of course, the linguistic needs. When the community came to the school, nobody in the school spoke Embera, so the teachers didn't know what to do. The principals and the administration didn't know what to do. There was a need for communication and for understanding what was going on. So what the administration did was bring these kids in the Programa de Aceleración. The Programa de Aceleración is a government program that looks for leveling up the kids that are overage for the school level and trying to make them catch up with the other kids. That's what the initial stage was. So we have a group of different kids, different ages, all together in this Programa de Aceleración. However, the language curriculum was based in Spanish, and Embera was not considered at that point because there was, first of all, no material to teach anything in Embera. The Embera language was still developing a writing system. Like at that time, it was very, very early, and there were some efforts being done in Antioquia, but there was absolutely nothing polished yet. So everything that the kids were exposed to was in Spanish. The school didn't know many things about the students before they came. So they came one day, and They were welcome, but there was not a lot of information on what they were their needs, the learning needs, or the previous schooling process that they have in the past in their territory. Teachers were not able to communicate effectively with the parents or with the students because there was the language barrier, and there was also like problems trying to communicate with leaders of the community and trying to find a way to reach these needs. So for me as a teacher researcher at that time, observing all these challenges going on in school, I found extremely challenging to address only one problem. There were like humanitarian issues going on. There was a lot of confusion and divided opinions of what we should do about the kids. Some teachers wanted the kids to come back to territorio. They felt overwhelmed by the problem of not having the tools to work with these kids, and but the school administration didn't know what to do. There was nothing that I had done before, so there were a lot of problems, policy problems, there were linguistic problems, there was the socioeconomic problems were probably the worst and the ones that were affecting the kids the most. There were health issues. So getting into the stage of defining only one problem was challenging for the development of this research. What I noticed that should be done first before noticing anything else was to reach in the community, to see who they were, because if we didn't know who they were, there was not a way that we could do a good job, provide a good service as educators to the kids. So all the myriad of problems that we had as a school community, I think the most important was to understand who our learners were and how could we integrate them and their communities into our school to design effective teaching for them. Well, at the end of the day, this is the way that I phrase the problem. There is a need to address the situation of displaced Indigenous children's communities in the curriculum, language, and cultural diversity to integrate activities that include Embera culture and language in the school. So at this stage in the research, I'm going to be honest with you guys, I was having a bias, and not only me, but also the other teachers in the school were biased into thinking the way we all see things. So we were thinking how problematic was the social economical situation of the kids and how bad from our perspective it was for them to be forced to be in a place where they didn't want to be. However, when I started interviewing the community leaders and the students and also the parents, I noticed how what they say didn't match what I thought. So one of the things that I noticed first is that some of them were very happy to be in Bogota, and some of the challenges that they were like facing were not new to them. So it was not all these bad things are happening to the community. That was my perspective, not the perspective of the community. So reflecting upon these findings, I had to design a research that was like bias free and that was not based on what I thought or what the school community thought that it was what they needed. So I found community-based pedagogy and indigenous education to be a very good starting point for research with this super vulnerable community. So the notions of forms of knowledge helped me frame a perspective in which I will observe things through the lens of the community, not through my lens, and notice and acknowledging what they already knew and what they had and could bring to the community instead of imposing a specific set of beliefs or a curriculum that was based on what we thought as teachers. What I found the most important was to understand that the Embera's agenda was the base and the motive for conducting this research. And what the voices said was that they wanted to be recognized as a culture that is present in the school, that has own traditions, language, and backgrounds, that now is in Bogota. They didn't want to go anywhere, and they want to be part of it, the community. And the other thing that the Embera leaders and parents told us was that they wanted to foster the creation of teaching material in Embera so the kids could have help and aid. So the participants for this study were 10 Catillo kids and 8 Chami kids. They were each 8 and 10, different school levels from 1 to 2 years of schooling back in Territorio, not necessarily in Spanish. We also worked with the interpreters, and they were research co-participants, and also the Embera student's full-time teacher. She was the teacher in the program of Aceleración with the Distrito. The proposed intervention was divided into 3 parts. The first one was to collect the life stories and narratives of the kids in a booklet, and that we created trying to use some Embera. So with these narratives, we wanted to open the door and open the conversation about the needs for the Embera community in the school. And with this as well, we wanted to promote a curricular change. At this point, kids were still expected to have the same learning outcomes that a kid that was native Spanish speaker. So there was a need for a curricular change and for an assessment change, because kids were assessed at the same level that Spanish-speaking kids, and of course all of them were failing. And finally, the intervention aimed at integrating the Embera community in the school setting. So for the first intervention, for collecting life stories, we designed a booklet called Bienvenidos a mi mundo. And in this book, we aim at trying to use the Embera, the way that the kids thought that Embera was written. And we collected some of the words, and they used Spanish, the Spanish alphabet and the Spanish sounds, in order to write down how they thought that some words were written. So this is an example of the booklet. The kids are talking about how life was in Territorio Embera. It's in Spanish. However, the words that are in Embera were written by the kids and by the interpreter. When these life stories started to be shared in the school, the conversation about what to do with the community, or how to integrate better the community and how to serve this community better, started in the levels of school teachers, but also in the administration. So there was change in el Manual de Convivencia, and the multicultural nature of the school was acknowledged. There was the inclusion of teaching material in Embera and the participation of adults, native speakers in the classroom. So now the teacher was able to communicate and translate to the kids using an interpreter. 2 interpreters were hired in the school. So the policy changes were very important, because that meant that the school needed to promote the use and integration of Embera as language, but also as a culture. So this was done through the use of not only the interpreter, but also through the invitation of the community to participate in events in the school. At this point, Embera parents were invited to school to do presentations about their work, their art. The kids were representing the school in distrital contests, and in general, the community started to be part of the school. Also, the use of the mother tongue in the development of second language was revealed through the interviews. In this case, one of the students said, "Yo puedo escribir en español y como conozco cómo escribir, puedo escribir en Embera, como suena el español. Cuando no hay palabra en Embera, le escribo en español." In the example, we notice how the student tried to make sense of how could this Embera word be written in Spanish, and using the tools, the literacy tools that he already has, tries to make sense of his other language. So wrapping up, then The schooling process of the Embera kids changed after the intervention in terms of the inclusion of community assets in the curriculum, in terms of using of the language, of the Embera language in text and narratives. Kids develop literacy skills using their own language. The most important for me was the integration of the community in the school, because that was the one that let us see who they were and what their needs were. But there are also other implications. In this case, for me as a teacher researcher, this project was very important because it helped me notice very important aspect of the teaching career and the researcher career that I didn't know before. So one of them is in terms of Spanish as a second language. I really didn't know that well how important it is to have a specialized Spanish program, but not a Spanish regular program for these kids. It is very important to have a Spanish as a second language program in this, with these communities, not only the Emberas, but also other indigenous groups. So there is a lot of things to get done yet in terms of policy, in terms of linguistic studies for creating tools and materials to promote the language. There is also a lot to get done with teacher development to give the teachers the tools to be prepared to face these challenges with the integration with different communities into a very diverse classroom. Okay, so I think that's it. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for the invitation again, Dr. Clavijo. And if you have any questions regarding the research methodology, specific things about the research design or the literature that I explore, but if you have questions or suggestions or feedback, I'll always welcome your emails. So thank you very much for having me.